And we are live. Welcome to episode 235 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshel Sag. Let's get started with my first topic, and I know you're going to have a lot to add to this as well, Anshel, but you and I were with T-Mobile for the last 2 days in Bellevue. There was an innovation summit. There was an analyst forum, and there was a big announcement. So I want to kind of cover that, and I want to get your perspective on things as well. So the Innovation Summit sort of followed on the heels of a T-Mobile town hall. There were some executive announcements that dropped this week. So Ulf, and I can't even pronounce his last name, but he replaced Neville Ray as president of technology at T-Mobile. He announced his retirement. And then a shock to me, Callie Field, that leads T-Mobile for Business, announced that she's departing the company. Had a chance to spend some time with Callie. She's done a fantastic job, taking what the company has done from a business perspective, from access to a set of highly differentiated services that you and I have covered on multiple podcasts. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some additional insights that we gleaned from the analyst forum that we also attended. But, from my perspective, there was one big announcement that I thought was just, from my perspective, very, very compelling. SuperMobile. And, it's funny, we were able to talk to executives, and this was not tied to the recent Superman movie that dropped. But what SuperMobile is a set. They're bundling basically 3 things. One, and this is for enterprises. One, there's now a dedicated slice for deterministic connectivity for mobile users on their business plan. So this is a smartphone-enabled solution. They are also bundling T-Satellite because that is now in production. We're going to talk more about T-Satellite as well. And then finally, there are a number of security enhancements, including a threat intelligence integration. And the details on the security piece were lacking. I mean, that's some feedback that I did provide Mo Cabot, that is T-Mobile's CMO. You and I had an opportunity to spend time with Mo and others. But at a very high level, I really like what T-Mobile is doing with SuperMobile. They are leaning into their nationwide standalone network. They're doing innovative things with slicing. They've already done T-Priority for first responders. And what's really cool about this is that this bubbled up from actual customer requests. So their T-Mobile for Business customers have seen T-Mobile, the T-Priority solution in market, and they wanted something that was focused on enterprise. And so I love that. I mean, and that really reinforces the fact that T-Mobile listens to its subscribers and develops solutions that are relevant and noteworthy for their customers as well. So I know I covered that really, really quickly. The other thing I'll add before I allow you to provide your insights, we had time with an executive that is leading the roadmap development efforts for TFB, and much of that was under non-disclosure. So unfortunately, we can't provide a lot of those details. But from my perspective, the company is really doubling down. They're leveraging their investment in their network. And there are going to be some very, very innovative solutions that, again, move beyond access, that are going to really address things like customer experience, security, and just overall business needs. So I didn't want to steal any of your thunder. I probably stole a little bit of your thunder, but what do you think about all that?
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
I'll say Ulf's last name is Evoldsen.
Good. Thank you.
He came to T-Mobile from Ericsson.
Mm-hmm.
And he's being replaced by our friend John Saw,
Yep.
Which I do think is, I thought it was very curious because they have very similar skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And John was brought on from Sprint. So I've known him back when he was at Sprint. And he comes with a lot of really good experience and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with him on the L4S announcement. And yeah, I think Ulf will be missed, but I think John is a good replacement.
Sure.
On the Callie side of things, I also don't really fully understand that because she's very much loved within the organization.
Oh yeah.
But they are restructuring
Hmm.
how the company is being organized, and I believe that uh, it is a bit of a Deutsche Telekom takeover in a way.
Hmm.
There are more and more executives coming from Deutsche Telekom
Yeah.
uh, to lead T-Mobile, which I don't really know how I feel about. But that's, Deutsche Telekom is the largest shareholder, and they've had a majority stake in the company for quite some time. I don't
Mhm.
believe they have a majority stake anymore,
Yeah.
but they do have significant influence in the company's operations. So
Hmm.
that seems to be what's happening, in my belief. That this is more of a bit of more of a Deutsche Telekom influence operation.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think overall, I think SuperMobile is a really interesting offering, and I think that it will, to your point, it's basically T priority, but for non first responders in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Um, and I think adding T satellite is a good way to differentiate. Also, the network slicing feature
Yeah.
that's literally nobody else can offer that today. Um, and I think they're going to continue to build on their advantage in their network to compete, right? They have more spectrum, they have a more advanced network, and they're going to try and do everything they can to stay ahead of Verizon and AT&T.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that this is generally a good thing. I mostly agree with what you're saying, but yeah, I just want to add a little bit color, especially considering my next topic. And
Well,
also, I
and,
wanted to cheers you because I'm thirsty.
yeah. So Anshel and I are enjoying a cocktail. So I actually got back from Bellevue at 1:30 in the morning. So it's been a very long day for me. But hey, just a final comment about Callie's departure. She's a total rock star. She's been with the company for over 2 decades. She's moved up from the ranks, like from the very bottom of the ranks up. From my perspective, and I'm glad you touched on the Deutsche Telekom, sort of executive influence that's coming into T-Mobile. From my perspective, that is happening to better operationalize the business and scale the business for future growth. And so this executive that they're bringing in from DT has a lot of experience. And I think one of the challenges that TFB has had is that because the consumer business is the lion's share of the top line revenue and really sort of drives a lot of the strategy and the development and the investment in the business. They wanted to better operationalize what they're doing so that they can have independent resources to grow the roadmap. And again, we can't talk about the specifics because as analysts we were bound by NDA on that. But suffice it to say, there are a lot of exciting things that are coming on a number of different fronts that I think are really going to continue to accelerate TFB's momentum in its competitiveness against AT&T and Verizon that have had much more mature enterprise solution offerings over time. So, at these inflection points, she was the right leader at the right time. She leaves a legacy of building a very, very strong foundation. So she leaves on very, very positive terms, and I wouldn't be surprised to see her in even a higher level role at another MNO or a company that's adjacent to the telecommunications industry. So, Callie, it was great to see you, and just I wish you all the best in your new adventure. So, but with that, let's shift gears and let's talk about another operator, AT&T, and this was pretty big news. So, you and I have talked about Echostar and Dish for a number of years, and what we perceive as some of the challenges with their spectrum squatting and that sort of thing. But just recently, it was announced that AT&T has acquired considerable amount of their low and mid band spectrum at a price tag of $23 billion. And so I'll let you take it away, my friend.
Sure. So this deal um, is very complex for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Um, I think one, it does put more spectrum in AT&T's hands. Thankfully, our friend Mike Dano actually shared what the spectrum landscape looks after this acquisition,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he showed. I think this was from TD Cowen. They were kind of demonstrating what the actual difference would be. So you add that 50 megahertz to AT&T. What does that look like? That actually takes AT&T from last place in spectrum and puts them in second place with 314 megahertz of low to mid band spectrum. That's still below T-Mobile's 376, but it is higher than Verizon's 279. So it gives AT&T a bit more of a fighting chance against T-Mobile and Verizon. And it also gives them a really good coverage layer bit of spectrum, because 20 megahertz is not a joke when it comes to these lower bands, because there's not that much frequency available. And that 20 megahertz will be really valuable for nationwide coverage. And it could also potentially be used for satellite as well. There was some talk of that online. But I also think that I don't really believe that there's a application for satellite that would trump using it for terrestrial, because you always want to have terrestrial more than you want to have satellite. It's just more scalable and viable. I don't know what they will do with it, but deploying it will be expensive. So there's a possibility that actually satellite could be a cheaper way to deploy that spectrum. Now, that said, the other spectrum they got is 3.545 gigahertz, which was the spectrum that AT&T bought from the U.S. government, and so it had Dish. So now they can actually deploy that like instantaneously, and that will improve their mid-band coverage and speeds, which is pretty big. So those two chunks of spectrum are very valuable. That's 30 megahertz, so that's no joke, and that will help AT&T a lot in competing with Verizon and T-Mobile on speeds and feeds, but also in coverage. So I think overall this is good for AT&T. What I will say is I don't really appreciate the way that it was achieved, because this was very clearly a influence operation by the FCC's chair and the Trump administration to bully Echostar Dish to give up the spectrum. I almost wish they had forced them to give it up in a more traditional way, as in having there be an auction for the spectrum, because AT&T basically got the spectrum without anyone ever having a chance to bid for it. So yes, Dish and Echostar did make $10 billion on this spectrum. They paid $13 billion for this and got 25 for it. So they actually made $12 billion, which is a great return on investment. And we'll see what they do with that money, but that's actually a ton of money that they can use to do a lot of things. And it also leaves them with 76 megahertz of spectrum left in their network. But they said they will decommission a lot of their sites with Open RAN. So that also will create some consequences for Open RAN vendors and the movement of Open RAN as a technology for the industry. So there's a lot going on with this deal. Some things good, some things bad. I do like AT&T being more competitive here. I just don't think they should have gotten it this way. And I think most people will agree with me.
I agree with you. It's unconventional, but I do like the fact that it balances the spectrum footprint with T-Mobile. And clearly, when you look at the 5G deployments in the U.S., AT&T is certainly in a second place position when you look at where they're at with standalone and in what they're doing with Ericsson on leveraging things like Open RAN, like you mentioned, and network programmability and API and all of that. I think it evens the playing field. But I agree with you. It's unconventional. But hey, listen, this second Trump administration is very unconventional. I mean, look at the 10% investment in Intel. And many could argue that Intel is too big to fail. That Foundry needs to find customers so that we can be competitive from a supply chain perspective in silicon with TSMC. But yeah, we live in very unconventional times, and this was absolutely, I agree with you, a very unconventional move. But I'm hoping at the end of the day, it ultimately benefits, it benefits subscribers and benefits telecommunications industry in general. But with that, let's move to my second topic, and I'm gonna be pretty quick on these two because I know you've got a lot to talk about with your other two topics. But news broke recently around Ericsson joining a Swedish AI consortium, And this is interesting. And so it's actually a formulation of an AI company that's composed of all 100% Swedish companies. And it is intended to promote Swedish AI. And you know, there's no specific sort of references to, hey, you know, what are the applications, what are the outcomes, what are the use cases, but certainly we've talked about things like AI RAN. I mean, certainly NVIDIA is focused on that. They're promoting that quite a bit. And I really like this because what Ericsson is doing, and we've talked about this before, Ericsson formed that JV around API and programmability. We spent time with T-Mobile this week and learned more about what they're doing with their APIs and their, I think it's called DevEdge, which is their developer set of resources that provide not only access to their production standalone 5G network, but they also provide resources so that the developers can more quickly and easily develop, you know, next generation applications that take advantage of low latency and, you know, strong throughput and massive device support and that sort of thing. But I really like this. So this is another representation, another example of how Ericsson is thinking a little bit more broadly and you know, joining consortiums and driving JVs to drive, you know, to basically foster and drive innovation. So that's what I've got to say on it. I don't know. Did you catch that news? Any thoughts there?
I did not, but this kind of falls in line with a lot of what we're seeing from the European companies in terms of sovereign AI.
Yeah,
um,
good
and
point.
focusing on building AI within the bounds of their culture and their
Mm-hmm.
society and what
Mm-hmm.
they accept, which I think makes sense because I think Europeans are a lot more sensitive about privacy
Yep.
and how AI is being used.
Yep.
So I think we're going to see different types of implementations of AI, especially considering the the rules that Europeans follow when it comes to data sovereignty and privacy.
Yeah, you know, I totally agree with you, and I think, you know, the other opportunity here is that let's not mince words. NVIDIA is driving, from a silicon perspective, modern AI, right? And there are, you know, I think there's a French company, and I'm forgetting the name, Mistral, I believe,
Mhm.
that has a very robust large language model and platform. But this, you know, and then this is, of course, you know, focused on Swedish companies. This allows Europe to be a little more possibly competitive in you know, participate in what I deem the AI gold rush. So, and I agree with you. Typically, you know, from a privacy standpoint, Europe tends to be very leading edge. From a sustainability perspective, Europe tends to be very leading edge as well. So I think, you know, one of the big challenges with AI is power consumption and sustainability. So, I mean, this could really birth a lot of innovation and opportunity around providing more sustainable AI infrastructure and frameworks and that sort of thing. So, excellent point, my friend, that you pointed out there. Well, hey, let's go to your second topic. And Apple invites have gone out. There's a big announcement coming up in September.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So Apple event's finally happening. It's basically happening at the same time that everybody would expect it to,
Mm-hmm.
which is about the first 2 weeks of September, uh, and a lot of people expected it to land at this time, so it did, and I will be there. I got invited this year after 6 years of not attending in person. So I will be there and I'll be covering all the announcements and talking about all the latest 5G capabilities, which Apple devices end up with an Apple modem, which ones don't.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation is that we still won't see it at the high end where there's the most volume,
Right.
but there's a possibility some lower end models might get it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and next year, we'll probably see a broader application of 5G modems within Apple's lineup, including a potential foldable. But
Yeah.
I also want to talk about another rumor, which is that Apple's watches might be getting 5G.
Hmm.
And I think it's actually a really great thing if you think about it, because if they deploy 5G and it's standalone, which might force AT&T and Verizon to actually go full standalone, um, maybe they could do a red cap modem,
I was just going to
and it
say,
would.
I mean, this could be, this is a perfect opportunity for Apple to do 5G RedCap, right?
Totally, because it's actually gonna. A lot of people don't know is that 5G RedCap is actually lower power
Yeah.
than LTE, and in a lot of cases better throughput. So
Mm-hmm.
you could actually get a better connected smartwatch experience with 5G than you would with the current 4G models.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest fan of cellular watches. I have had mostly bad experiences with them in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some applications where it makes sense, like if you just want to have your watch and nothing else, and you're outdoors, because truthfully, the antennas on these things are not the greatest,
No.
and as a result, their attenuation indoors kind of sucks. So generally, I think these are great for fitness and outdoor use. And I hope that we see 5G watches become a thing, because I think it will continue to push innovation on 5G and even make watches better at like streaming or phone calls, all these kinds of things that 5G will automatically enhance by just enabling standalone over a RedCap modem. So that was kind of my thought on the Apple event.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go and be there. I've never actually been inside the Steve Jobs Theater because they built it after the pandemic
Yeah.
or during the pandemic, and it was finished at that time. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Well, I'm happy that you finally got the invite. It's sort of like, when you couldn't go to the Qualcomm Snapdragon Summit and I get to stand in for you. So I got the golden ticket one year, but I think it's a testament, man. You've been just a writing fiend. You've been publishing Forbes articles. You've been publishing More Insights and Strategy Analysts Insights and research notes. And so it's very well deserved. I have one thing to say about the possibility of a 5G RedCap Apple Watch. I want satellite on that.
You mean like the Pixel Watch has?
Oh, does the Pixel Watch have satellite support? Shit,
So
I
the
didn't know.
Pixel Watch that will be, I think it's available today or yesterday,
Yeah.
or maybe later in the month. It was part of the big Pixel announcement.
Okay.
The Pixel Watch 4 has satellite messaging.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, when I'm hiking in my place in Colorado, like, and encountering black bears, like I did on a trail run with my wife, it might be nice to have that. So
Totally.
cool, man. Hey, I'm going to hit my third and final topic pretty quickly as well. I found this to be really interesting news, but recently Nokia actually filed a lawsuit against Paramount Skydance. For Paramount Skydance is obviously the movie studio for Paramount, and they're alleging infringement on several patents related to video streaming technology. And I mention this because it sort of blows my mind that I didn't know that Nokia had intellectual property tied to video
Oh yeah.
streaming. I had no idea. And like, you're a Shutterbug, so you probably knew this already. But I just find it fascinating that the company is a little more diversified than I think people really understand. When you look at, I don't think a lot of people understand that Nokia has a huge presence in optical and transport. In fact, they're right up there with Cisco and Huawei. And it's like, it just makes you think, it's like, why doesn't the company do a better job of making all of this knowledgeable to the market? But I mean, any thoughts before we hit your third and final?
No, I mean, Nokia has always been a very strong IP player.
Yeah.
Um, if you think about like the lawsuits that they had with Qualcomm multiple
Hmm.
times, and they've defended their IP very rigorously
Yeah.
over the years. So this doesn't surprise me that they would have something like this, especially considering they have all of these networking technologies, and they're sure they've done tons of R&D in the networking space
Yeah.
specifically for media. So none of this really surprises me. I didn't know that they had this IP, but it's an interesting time for the lawsuit because now Paramount is part of a larger company
Yeah.
with much deeper pockets. And maybe they were waiting to file this lawsuit once they were part of a bigger entity that has more
Hmm.
money, because Paramount was pretty much broke, and that's why they got bought.
Yeah.
And that's, there's a whole other thing about how that acquisition went down. But
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I did not know about that.
Yeah. And I mean, streaming's been big for quite some time, but now it's becoming almost the primary, vehicle for even new releases, unless it's a movie that Tom Cruise is starring in, and he's very adamant about it's going to get a theatrical release first, and then it's going to go to streaming. But with that said, the new Mission Impossible movie is available on streaming, so I may be watching that this weekend over the long 3-day weekend. But I digress. But let's hit your third and final. And you want to talk about the Pixel 10 launch?
Yes. So there were a lot of curious things that happened with the Pixel 10 launch. I was not able to attend in person, but reviews and devices launched yesterday. And it is the first device on T-Mobile's network that can do picture messaging and data. T-Mobile will be fully launching data and messaging, not text messaging, but just regular like app messaging in October. But this is the first device to get that capability. So you can use Google Maps with satellite, which is super cool.
Dude, I love that. I love that combination, and I want it now.
Oh, yeah.
I may actually I'm thinking about upgrading. I'm thinking, dude, you're gonna laugh. I'm thinking about moving from iOS back to Android, and I'm thinking the Pixel 10 may be the product that
I mean, if you do, I'd probably recommend a Pixel 10 Pro XL because it has all the features.
Yeah.
All the latest. You can reuse all of your MagSafe stuff on it because it has G2.2, and it actually does 20. I think it does 25-watt wireless charging too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, getting back to the Pixel series, they have the new Tensor G5, which now we know details about. It's ARM CPU, Imagination GPU, which is the same base tech that Apple uses, but they've licensed it now. They do have their own stuff. And then it's a Samsung modem from the last generation. So they have mixed their own IP with third-party IP and then Samsung. So they ditched Samsung for the processor, but they kept them for the modem, which is wild and confusing, but it's Google's choice. And the performance is okay. It's not really as good as a Snapdragon processor, but Google seems to be happy with it, and it's giving them enough AI performance that they can do stuff like the Pixel ProRes Zoom, which is the new feature where you can do 100x zoom, and it uses an AI model on device to infer what you're trying to take a picture of and fill in the resolution with a better quality. And some of the pictures, if you go online and look at Pixel ProRes Zoom, you'll see some crazy results. You're like, how are you getting that kind of zoom? It doesn't look real. But it does use an on-device model to infer what you're trying to take a picture of and clean it up so it doesn't look like a bad watercolor painting. And then it doesn't work on people. So you can't take pictures of people and get that result. It has to be objects and other things because people are more complex, and you probably need a bigger database of human faces to not make it look watercolory. Because if you've done some AI stuff and you look at it in the past, it's kind of a nightmare.
It actually looks like a horror movie when these people's faces and images are like pulled and
exactly. So this is they're trying to avoid that. It also has some other on-device AI capabilities, like the ability to translate people's voices using their voice in another language. This is technology that they've pulled in from other parts of Google, the XR space specifically, with Beam. And it's very cool. I'm hoping to get my hands on a Pixel 10 Pro XL fairly soon. I will be getting my hands on a Pro Fold down the road, but that's not actually launching until October. So right now it's just the first 3 Pixels: Pixel 10, Pixel Pro 10 Pro, and Pro XL, and then the Fold will come later. I'm excited about that because I just published my Fold 7 review from Samsung, which I have a lot of good things to say about, but there are some gaps still, and the Pixel addresses some of them, but then the Pixel has its own gaps. So, we're still not in the place where foldables in the US are as good as they are in China, but I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing so far. Feel free to read my Fold 7 review. I think it went live yesterday, and then I'll hopefully have some Pixel reviews down the road.
Awesome, buddy. Well, and you kind of I was going to ask you, how does what Google's doing with the 10 compare to with that combination of different SoCs compared to Snapdragon, and your take on it is that Snapdragon's just more performant, it sounds like.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, buddy, it's been a great podcast. I'm wearing my UT Burn Orange. We play Ohio State. We are number 1 in the nation for the first time in our program's history. I'm not going to make any predictions about how my Longhorns are going to do, but I'm going to be glued to the TV at 11 Central Standard Time and watching college football all weekend. What are you going to do this weekend on the long 3-day weekend?
I'm actually going to be preparing for my trip to the UK.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
going
right.
to visit ARM next week. So that'll be interesting, but I will mostly be preparing and unpacking and cleaning and then packing again and spending time with my family before I leave the country. So
Awesome.
that's it. I'll also be testing. I got a new laptop and a new keyboard. The laptop is a 14-inch laptop that has a rollable display that turns into a 16 with the press of a button or a gesture. And then I have a split keyboard that I got from Naya that I saw at CES. I actually did a video on that on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a split keyboard with like convertible buttons and touchpads, and it's super low profile and it folds on itself and it's magnetic and you can kind of take it anywhere. So I'll be
Cool.
taking that, and I'm also considering taking my Vision Pro with my MacBook on the road so I can have a cool, super high power setup, which I'm also publishing a review about fairly soon.
Cool. Just do me a favor. Don't wear your Vision Pro on the airplane. I saw some nerd doing this, like on a
I did
flight.
that when I first got the Vision Pro, and I
I
got
wanted,
weird looks.
dude. I wanted to. He was in the bulkhead, and I was like a row behind him. I wanted to walk up and just knock it off his face. It was so funny. Anyway, that's a little aggressive, but with that, buddy, it's been another great podcast. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners on this week's topic is interesting. If anyone would like to reach out and provide insights on a future 5G pod topic, please reach out to us on social media. Will's at Willtown Tech, and I'm at Anshel. We hope you have a great holiday weekend, and please don't forget to rate us and subscribe.